Tate pulled Noah tighter against his chest, his arm heavy and possessive across my back. "You kept me waiting for 4 hours, Noe. I'm going to lose out on sleep because of you." I huffed softly, still tense at first, but his warmth made it harder to resist. His heartbeat was steady against my cheek, grounding, familiar. "You act like you weren't awake the whole time anyway," I murmured back, though I didn't pull away this time. Tate only tightened his hold in response, his chin resting lightly on my head as if settling me exactly where he wanted me. He caught my hand and threaded his fingers through mine, firm enough to make the message clear. I tried to pull away. He tightened his grip, slow and deliberate, like resistance only confirmed what he already believed. Sleeping alone wasn't a choice he was willing to allow. He held on like letting go would mean losing control, like possession was proof. I lay there rigid, staring into the dark, my thoughts sharp and loud while he stayed perfectly still, satisfied, already convinced I wasn't going anywhere. Morning came all at once. I woke under him, not beside, under. His weight pressed me into the mattress like he'd arranged himself that way on purpose, as he'd settled in and decided this was where I stayed. One leg hooked over mine, his torso heavy across my chest, my breath forced shallow. My hand was still locked in his, fingers tangled, numb, held above my head the way he'd left them. The memory hit hard, his mouth closing over our joined fingers in the dark the night before. Slow, intentional, not affection, a mark. Tate shifted slightly, just enough to remind me he was awake now, just enough to make sure I felt it. His breath brushed my skin, calm and steady, like he wasn't worried about time or resistance or consequences. I didn't move. He tightened his hold, not rough, not gentle, a correction, that was the test. My pulse hammered. Every instinct screamed to shove him off, to break the shape he'd forced us into, but I didn't. I went still, jaw clenched, spine rigid, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. He waited. When I didn't fight, didn't yield, didn't soften, he settled more of his weight onto me, like this was proof enough. Like my silence meant consent in his head. Something in me snapped then, not loud, not visible, cold, clean. I stared at the ceiling and decided this would not be the moment I disappeared. He lay on me like a warning, like a claim, like he believed morning belonged to him as much as I did. The knock came soft at first, then louder. "Tate," his mother called through the door. "Breakfast." His body went still on top of mine, not startled, calculating. He didn't answer. I took the moment. I twisted hard, suddenly shoving at his shoulder, breaking the shape he'd trapped me in. The mattress squeaked. My breath tore free of my chest. He reacted instantly, weight back on me, hand closing around my wrist before I could pull free. Not angry, focused, like he'd been waiting for it. "Don't," he said, low enough that only I could hear. The knock came again, closer now, expectant. "1 minute," Tate called back, his voice calm, casual, like everything was perfectly normal. But even as the words left his lips, his hold on me tightened subtly, a quiet little correction that made it impossible to move. His forehead came to rest against my temple, warm and firm, his breath slow and steady, brushing against my skin in a way that was both protective and possessive. It wasn't rough or angry, just deliberate, a gentle reminder that he could keep me exactly where he wanted me, if only to hold me close. Then he wrapped me up in a full bear hug from behind, arms strong and enclosing, pressing me to his chest like he was trying to absorb every piece of me. It was soft yet urgent, the kind of hug that made my heart swell with warmth and safety. He nuzzled the back of my head with his small, innocent sounds escaping him as if he were storing up every ounce of closeness, every quiet moment, because he didn't know when he'd get to do it again. I felt his careful, steady breathing against my shoulder, and even though it was simple, ordinary, it made me feel like I belonged entirely to him, and as he belonged to me too, just as much. Tate was a hugger and a kisser, always had been. He gave me a dozen full-body hugs a day, like it was as natural as breathing, like keeping me close was something his body did without asking permission from his mind. He'd pull me in tight, arms locking around me with an ease that felt practiced, familiar, like I belonged there. And then came the kisses, soft and quick against my temple, scattered and careless, like he didn't even realize he was doing it anymore. A habit, a reflex. Something automatic. To anyone else it would have looked like love, it would have felt like love. But it wasn't, not really. Because there was adult depth behind it, no understanding of what those touches meant to me, how they settled into my chest and stayed there long after he'd already moved on. It wasn't intentional on his part, it wasn't something he chose to give me, it was just Tate, acting on impulse, on comfort, on whatever need he had in the moment to feel close to something warm and familiar, and I had always been that for him. Tate treated me like he was a 5-year-old who had just gotten a puppy, excited, attached, unable to keep his hands off me, always reaching, always pulling me back like I might disappear if he didn't hold on tight enough. There was something almost innocent in it, something that might have been sweet if it hadn't hurt so much. Because a child loves a puppy for how it makes them feel, for comfort, for companionship, for the simple joy of having it there. Not for what the puppy is on its own. Not in a way that understands responsibility or depth or the quiet weight of real care. That was Tate. He loved having me. He loved touching me, holding me, keeping me close like I was something that belonged in his space, in his orbit. But he didn't love me, not in the way that saw me as separate from him, not in the way that asked what I needed or what it cost me to stay. And I let him. I wouldn't stay. I stood there every time, letting his arms wrap around me, letting his lips brush my temple like it meant something more than it did. I leaned into it sometimes, just enough to pretend it was mutual, just enough to trick myself into believing there was something deeper underneath it all. But there wasn't. There had never been, because to Tate I wasn't someone he chose. I was just someone he kept. Then he eased off slowly, deliberately, like restraint was his choice. The second his weight was gone, I sat up, heart hammering, hands clenched in my lap. He watched me dress, didn't look away, didn't speak. Downstairs, he reached for my hand at the table, casual this time, public, like nothing had happened. I hesitated. He smiled anyway. I took my seat, not his hand. His knee brushed mine beneath the table, light, deliberate, like a reminder that the night wasn't finished just because the morning had arrived. Tate loved footsie. He loved it even more when he was being ignored. I kept my feet still, tucked under my chair, my face neutral. I talked about Maya instead, like the night hadn't happened, like the morning hadn't left a mark. She's a sweet girl, his mom said, interested. Yeah, I said too quickly, she's really nice. His foot slid toward mine. I shifted away. He followed. Then he kicked me hard enough that my knee jerked and my fork clattered against the plate. The sound cut through the table. Yes, I said, breath tight, answering his mom even as my hands shook. Tate glared at me, eyes sharp, furious that I'd spoken at all. Boys, his mother warned, not looking up, stop fighting. She finally glanced between us. Tate, be kind to Noah, he's in love. The words landed wrong. Tate froze, his expression flickering, anger giving way to something rower, tighter, as he'd just been told he was already losing me, like love was a door closing and he was on the wrong side of it. His foot found mine again. I pulled back. He followed, slow this time, pinning my ankle to the chair leg, pressing just enough to make the message clear. I kept talking anyway, voice steady, eyes on his mom. Maya's busy with work, I said, but we're. His heel dug in, a warning. I swallowed and didn't look at him. I reached for my water with a hand that barely held still. The pressure increased, not a kick, not a nudge, a hold. Noah, his mom said. Yeah, I answered too fast, sorry. Tate watched me then, eyes dark, intent, waiting for me to break eye contact with his mother and give him what he wanted. I didn't. I kept my foot locked where it was, jaw tight, pretending the table wasn't a battlefield. He leaned back in his chair, satisfied enough for the moment. Mom, he said casually. Like he hadn't just tested how far he could push me. Do you mind if Emily comes over for dinner tonight again? The room shifted. His mom brightened. Emily, of course, I haven't seen her in 2 weeks. Tate nodded, finally looking at me, really looking. His foot eased off mine, just a fraction, like a reward. I stared at my plate, appetite gone, understanding exactly what he was doing. He hadn't stopped fighting, he just changed weapons. Sunday dinner with Emily was the worst possible outcome for me. Emily was the reason I no longer slept in Tate's room. She was the reason I had a girlfriend at all. One stab to the heart had nearly killed me the first time. Another would finish the job. Tate had to know that. Tate wanted me to feel what he'd felt when Maya was here, how it hollowed you out, how it trapped you in your own body while someone else took your place. Jealousy, helplessness, the slow burn of being made irrelevant. Emily laughed too loudly at his jokes, sat too close, touched his arm like it meant something. Tate let it happen, encouraged it, played the part effortlessly. He barely looked at me, which somehow hurt more than if he had. Every smile he gave her felt deliberate. Every glance away from me felt earned. This wasn't dinner, it was punishment. Dinner was halfway finished when it happened. The table was full, Tate's parents talking about work, Emily nodding politely, her fork resting neatly against her plate. I was listening just enough to seem engaged, my knee bouncing under the table, hyper-aware of Tate's presence beside me. He hadn't spoken more than 2 words since sitting down, just ate, watched, waited. Then the phone rang. It cut through the room, loud and sudden, sharp enough that everyone paused. I'll get it, Tate said immediately, pushing his chair back before anyone else could move. Of course he would, anything to keep me trapped in a room alone with Emily. He disappeared into the hallway and conversation slowly restarted at the table, but my attention stayed fixed on the sound of his voice drifting back. Hello. A pause, then my name. Noah, Tate said, loud enough that I knew he meant for me to hear it. It's for you, says his name is Mark. He didn't bring the phone over. He just stood there halfway between the kitchen and the dining room holding it like evidence. I excused myself, smiling too brightly, murmuring something automatic, and stood. Emily looked up at me, curious but calm, unaware of the shift that had just occurred. I took the receiver. "Hey you." "Hey kid," Mark's voice said, familiar, easy, completely out of place in that house. "Sorry if this is a bad time, I didn't know if you were busy." "I'm at dinner," I said carefully. "Oh sorry, I can call back." "No, it's okay," I said, glancing at Tate. He hadn't moved. His eyes were locked on my face, unreadable but burning with something tight and restrained. "I just wanted to check in," Mark continued. "You doing all right?" "I'm fine," I said, really. Another pause. "Okay," he said, "I won't keep you, just didn't want to disappear, want to go on a date when I'm in town next." "I'd love to," I replied quietly. "I'll call you back after dinner soon." When I clicked the voice tone button and handed the phone back, Tate didn't take it right away. "So," he said, voice even too even, "that's another one of your friends." "Yes." "At dinner," he added. "It wasn't planned." He nodded once, then turned and set the phone back on its base with deliberate care, like he was placing something fragile down before it shattered. We returned to the table. Emily smiled at me when I sat back down. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, "sorry about that. Mark is in London and forgot about the time difference." She reached for her glass, unfazed. But Tate didn't touch his food again. He sat there staring at it but didn't lift a fork. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed now, gaze fixed straight ahead, not at me, not at Emily, but at some invisible point beyond the wall. The rest of dinner continued around us, polite voices and clinking silverware filling the space where confrontation couldn't exist. But under the table his knee pressed briefly against mine. Not accidental, not affectionate, a reminder. I didn't move it away. Emily didn't notice. And Tate didn't look at me, but I could feel it, the confirmation settling into him like something final, that even in his house at his table with his parents watching, I wasn't contained anymore. He didn't control me or my time. I slipped upstairs while everyone was distracted, my heart already racing. I called Mark to reschedule, said the original date wouldn't work, asked when he was free. We talked in circles for a minute, filling space. Then he asked, "Have you ever done phone sex, kid?" Mark smiled on the phone. "No," I shyly implied. I hesitated, checked the hall, and locked myself in the third-story bathroom by Tate's room. I kept my voice low, my back against the door, pretending the house wasn't full of listening walls. I did my best to sound confident, detached, like this was normal. It didn't take long, 5 minutes, maybe less, and Mark was finished, satisfied, breathless, and happy. I felt a rush of relief that surprised me, proof that I could still give someone what they wanted, proof that I wasn't trapped. "See you next week, handsome," Mark said. He hung up. So did I. When I turned, Tate was standing in the hallway. I hadn't heard him, hadn't seen him. He must have heard the phone sex but not who it was with. His face was tight, unreadable at first, then something broke through it. Hurt, confusion, anger twisted up with disbelief. He stared at me like I'd said something irreversible, like he was trying to understand how this had happened without him noticing. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us was louder than the call had been. Tate stepped closer, fast enough to crowd the air. "How many?" he demanded, the question almost eager, like he was bracing for the answer. "How many friends do you have now?" I said nothing. His mouth twitched. "Is there more than one girl you're dating?" Silence. His patience snapped. "Answer me," he said, voice rising. "Every time I try to get your attention, someone else gets it first. One of your guy friends, one of your—" He cut himself off, jaw clenched. "They always call, always." I looked past him toward the stairs. "Why aren't you downstairs?" I asked. "Why are you up here instead of minding your dinner?" His eyes flashed. "Because you disappeared." "Because you were spying," I shot back. He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You think I'd need to spy?" He shook his head, anger leaking through every word. "You don't even try to hide it. You make sure I hear, you make sure I know." "That's not true." "Then why does it feel like you're doing it on purpose?" he said. "Like you want me replaced, like you want me to watch it happen." I met his gaze at last. "You don't own me." His face hardened. "You don't get to pretend I don't matter," he said, voice low, shaking. "Not after everything." The silence stretched, heavy and electric. He looked at me like jealousy had hollowed him out, like he was furious and afraid at the same time and didn't know which feeling he hated more. He stared at me, breathing hard like he was fighting something inside himself. You know what, he said finally, voice sharp, go ahead. I didn't answer. Call them, he went on, bitterness spilling out now. Call Mark, call Maya, call anyone who isn't me. I clenched my jaw. Because that's what you're good at, right? He said, replacing people, pretending you never needed them in the first place. That landed hard. He took another step closer. You want the truth? Tate asked, eyes burning. You were never confused, you just liked knowing I'd be here when everyone else got bored. Silence. His face changed the second the words were out, like he'd felt them hit something vital, but he didn't stop. I was convenient, he said, that's all, a place to land until you find someone better. I felt it then, something clean and final. He opened his mouth like he might try to take it back, but it was too late. Some things, once said, don't leave room for apologies. Tate laughed, sharp and ugly, like something finally snapped loose. You want to know what I think, he said. I stayed quiet, he took my silence as permission. You're a disloyal cheater, he said. You like flashy things and throw away someone who cares about you, that's what this is, always has been. My chest tightened. You don't just move on, he went on, voice rising now, furious and shaking. You line people up, you make sure there's always someone else waiting. I looked at him then, he didn't stop. You act innocent, he said, eyes burning, but you're a whore, Noah, you give pieces of yourself away just to see who'll stay. The word hit like a slap, the room went dead quiet. Tate froze the second it left his mouth. His face changed, shock, regret, something like fear, but the damage was already done. I felt it settle in my chest, cold and absolute. I tried to walk forward towards him. Don't, he said, suddenly softer as he could rewind it. I shook my head. You don't get to say that, I said, steady now. You don't get to decide who I am because you're angry. He opened his mouth, closed it. There was nothing left he could say. Some words don't start fights, they end things. The second the word left his mouth, Tate knew he had said too much, crossed a line. His face went slack, anger draining out of it too fast, like someone had pulled a plug. The heat in his eyes flickered, replaced by something naked and wrong. Noah, he said, breath-catching, I didn't move. That was when it really hit him, not the silence, not my expression, the stillness, the way I stopped reacting at all. Tate was horrified by what he said to his dearest childhood companion. He immediately tried to apologize and make it right before the issue blew up in their faces. I didn't mean it like that, he rushed, the words tumbling now, frantic. I was mad, I wasn't thinking. Tate stepped closer, then stopped himself, hands curling at his sides like he didn't trust them anymore. That's not what I think of you, he said, voice breaking just enough to give him away. You know that, right? I looked at him then, not angry, not hurt, finished. His throat worked. Say something, he pleaded. Yell at me, hit me back, don't shut down like that. The fear finally surfaced, sharp and unmistakable, not of losing control, of losing me. I crossed a line, he said quietly, like admitting it out loud might pull me back. I know I did. He waited for forgiveness, for anger, for anything that meant we were still standing in the same place. I stepped past him instead. The space I left behind felt larger than the room itself. Tate stayed where he was, staring after me, already understanding that apologies don't always arrive in time and some words once spoken don't echo. They end. The word barely finished leaving his mouth before Tate recoiled from it. His face drained like the anger had burned itself out all at once. No, he said quickly. Noah, wait. I didn't turn back. You're not a whore, he said, the correction sharp with panic. That's not what I meant. He swallowed hard, hands flexing like he wanted to grab the words out of the air and shove them back inside himself. I was angry, he went on, too fast now. I was jealous, I said it to hurt you, I know I did. Silence. You're not that, he repeated, quieter. You're not a cheater, you're not, his voice cracked. I don't see you that way. He took a step, then stopped, like he finally understood how close he was to making it worse. I crossed a line, he said. I know I did. I turned just enough to look at him, not to forgive him, just to let him see that the apology had arrived after the wound. He nodded once, small and defeated, like he'd accepted something final. I'm sorry, he said anyway. The words hung there, true, useless, and far too late. Tate followed me down the hall, not close enough to touch, close enough to feel. Noah, he said again, please. I didn't answer. He tried softer, I didn't mean it, you know that. I stopped at the stairs, meaning it wasn't the point, I said, saying it was. He flinched as I'd hit him. I was jealous, he said, grasping now. I panicked, I thought I was losing you. I laughed once, short and humorless. You didn't think you were losing me, you thought you owned me. That's not true, he said immediately, too soon. I turned then. You didn't apologize because you hurt me, I said. You apologized because you hurt yourself. His mouth opened, closed. I'm trying, he said, voice breaking. Tell me what to do. You already did it, I said. That stopped him. I'll fix it, he insisted. I won't talk to Emily anymore, I won't. Don't, I cut in, don't start bargaining, that's not an apology, that's damage control. He dragged a hand through his hair, breathing hard. I can't lose you, he said. I looked at him then, really looked. You don't want to lose access to me, you already did, I said quietly. The words landed heavier than yelling ever could. Tate stood there, hands empty, watching me walk away, finally understanding that saying sorry doesn't rebuild what contempt tears down. Some breaks don't shatter loudly, they just don't hold anymore. I looked at him once more. You think last night was proof, I said, like the way you sleep next to me means something permanent. His jaw tightened. But I curl up the same way with other people, I went on. Same arm thrown over them, same breath at their neck, same bodies fitting together because beds are built for it. He didn't move. I spoon them, I said quietly. I let them think it's special. I fall asleep and wake up the same way you do, like nothing has changed. The words landed. That's what scares you, I finished. Not that I'll give myself away, that I already know how easy it is to replace the shape you make in a bed. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't need to. You're not replaceable, Tate, I said quietly. His face flickered with hope, then confusion. You'd have to matter enough to be replaced. That did it. I stepped past him, close enough that he had to hear every word. I have more fun with strangers in bed than I ever do with you, I said, cold and deliberate, because at least they don't mistake closeness for ownership. I paused just long enough for it to sink in. What scares you isn't what I do with them, I finished. It's knowing you never gave me anything they couldn't. I left him standing there, the truth settling in, slow and brutal, not loud, not dramatic, just final. I spun back around before I could stop myself. You want to know how little control you actually had, I said. His head snapped up, the color drained from his face. Maya and I swallowed once, then kept going. The last time she was here, you were right there, a few feet away. We fucked while you were blissfully asleep. He didn't blink. You never knew, I lied, the words sharp with something ugly and deliberate. That was the part that made it thrilling. Silence collapsed the room. Tate stared at me like the floor had disappeared, like something sacred to him had been violated in a way he couldn't undo or unhear. I felt it then, too late to stop it, too late to soften it. Some truths aren't confessions, they're weapons. Tate lunged. He wanted to grab me and push his oldest companion against the wall in anger. I moved on instinct, stepping back just fast enough that his hands closed on air. We froze there for half a second, me braced, him off balance, eyes wild with the thing he almost did. Fuck you, he yelled, the words ripping out of him as they hurt. He didn't wait for an answer. He turned, slammed the door so hard the walls shook, and was gone. The silence he left behind was worse than the shouting. It pressed in on me, heavy and final, and I knew whatever we were trying to call this was over. I never meant to say those words. By God, he was possessive, jealous in a way that felt like being watched even when he wasn't there. That night I did the one thing I'd sworn I wouldn't. I crept into his room. He was face down in his pillow, shoulders shaking, breath broken and raw, crying, really crying. I slid onto the edge of the bed. When the mattress dipped, he flinched hard as he'd braced for another blow. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words tearing out of me. I was angry, you spied on me and I wanted to hurt you back, I wanted you to feel it. He didn't look at me. Nothing happened, I said quickly, desperate. Maya and I didn't have sex, not then, not ever when we shared the bed. His breathing hitched like he didn't know whether to believe me or didn't want to. I crawled closer anyway, slow, careful, giving him every chance to pull away. I shouldn't have said it, I said. I shouldn't have tried to break you just because I was hurt. He stayed rigid, silent, tears soaking into the pillow between us. And lying there, inches apart, I understood something awful and final. Sorry didn't mean safe, and love didn't mean unbroken. I love you, Tate, I said, the words quieter than a confession, heavier than they should have been. You're my beloved buddy. I kissed his temple, soft, lingering, and let my nose rest against his neck. He smelled like soap and sleep and the ghost of tears. He seized me by the shoulders and pulled my body into his bed as his fingers pulled the duvet up to my chin, and he pulled my back flush to his chest. We were spooned together, my chest to his back. The shape of us too familiar to be innocent, and too careful to be anything else. His body was rigid, like he didn't trust the moment not to vanish. You haven't said those 3 words since your birthday, Noah, Tate murmured, his voice low, almost pleading, as he leaned over me in the dim light of the room. I felt his lips brush my temple, soft but insistent, and his fingers tangled in my hair, tugging gently as if claiming some small piece of me. My chest tightened, caught between comfort and the weight of everything unsaid. I don't want you sleeping in the spare room, he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I won't allow it. Your place is right here, with me. I tried to speak, to explain that I just wanted a little distance, a little space to breathe, but his hand on my hair, the intensity in his eyes, and the raw jealousy etched into his expression made my voice catch. You'd do anything for me to stay here, wouldn't you? My words were almost a question, almost a challenge, but the tension in his body betrayed the depth of his need. He was desperate, afraid, and furious all at once. He swallowed hard. Noah, No, Noah said, cutting me off sharply, his fingers tightening slightly. Don't. I can feel it, Noah. You think about it, someone else, some space away from me, and it makes me crazy. I don't want it. I won't let it happen. I could hear the tremor in his voice, the way his chest rose and fell in ragged bursts. His jealousy wasn't just possessiveness, it was fear. Fear that I might slip away, fear that I might find comfort in someone or something else. Tates, I murmured, my heart racing, I'm not going anywhere. He exhaled sharply, pressing his forehead against mine, eyes dark and stormy. Good, because I can't lose you, not now, not ever. You don't understand how much it terrifies me, the thought of you in that spare room or anywhere else with anyone else. I'd do anything, anything to keep you here, with me. I lay there, caught in the whirlwind of his intensity, my pulse pounding, mind spinning. The mixture of tenderness, fear, jealousy, and desire radiating off him pressed down on me like gravity. I didn't know where I ended and he began. I only knew that, despite the angst, despite the danger of being swallowed up by his obsession, I couldn't look away. I'll forgive and forget, Tate said, voice scraped thin. If you leave the spare room and stay here, move back into my room and stop this foolishness. The words landed like a weight. I can't, Noah said, not unkind, just true. The silence felt endless. On the weekends, Noah added, already bargaining with myself, I'll sleep here on the weekends. He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to feel the heat of his breath. No, he said, all 7 days. I knew then that this wasn't about sleep. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heart trip over itself like it was afraid I'd disappear if it slowed down. The sound he made shattered me, small, broken, almost embarrassing in its need. A wail he tried and failed to swallow, grief curling through it like smoke. I closed my eyes. This was how it always happened, not with passion or promises, but with exhaustion, with guilt, with the quiet urge to stop someone you love from falling apart, even if it means giving a little more than you can afford. I didn't say yes or no, those silent words Tate viewed as a silent promise. He clutched at me then, not tight, not violent, just enough to make sure I was real. And lying there holding him while something unnamed pressed between us, I felt the slow, hollow deflation of it. Not a victory, not a reconciliation, just 2 men clinging to the shape of what we used to be, afraid of what would happen if we let go. He shifted then, slowly, like he was afraid I might disappear if he moved too fast. He turned all the way around until we were facing each other. Our knees bumped, our foreheads nearly did. For a moment he just looked at me, eyes red, lashes wet, mouth unsteady, and then he smiled. Not the sharp one, not the practiced one, the small, tired smile he only ever let himself have when it was just us. My chest tightened. We folded into each other without speaking, arms finding familiar places, hands slipping together like they'd been waiting all night. His fingers threaded through mine and held on, not desperate now, just sure. I love you, Noe. Nose to nose, breath to breath. I could feel the warmth of him, the quiet steadiness returning, the way his body finally stopped bracing for loss. Neither of us said anything else. We didn't need to. Sleep took us like that, entangled, unfinished, pretending for a few hours that closeness didn't come with consequences. And in the dark, with his hand in mine and his breath soft against my mouth, I let myself believe, just for the night, that this was still something gentle. I didn't sleep soundly that night. I drifted in and out, waking every hour or two, my body tense in a way that felt both familiar and foreign. I wasn't used to sharing space like this anymore, not after teaching myself how to be alone. My dreams kept pulling me under and dragging me back up again, tangled with images of Tate, with things I had seen and things I wished I could forget. This was not how I wanted to spend my weekend. The next morning the phone rang and Tate answered during breakfast. It was Mark again, and once the meal was over I walked upstairs to call Mark back. Tate appeared. Tate stepped into my space, close enough that the mattress dipped behind my knees, close enough that I had nowhere to move without touching him. His hands slammed down on either side of me, trapping me against the bed without actually grabbing me. His eyes were wild, hurt, twisted into something sharp and ugly. "You're already gone," he said. "I can feel it." I swallowed. "Tate. Don't," he snapped. "Don't say my name like we're close, like we were." He laughed once bitterly. "You disappear at night with other people and come back acting innocent, like you don't have any more friends than me, like I'm supposed to just accept it, you wanting others." His voice shook, then hardened. "You use people, you make them feel special, and then you leave the second someone else looks at you or wants to be friends." That one landed. He leaned closer, eyes burning. "You think I don't see it, you think I don't know you're already halfway out the door." I couldn't breathe. "Say it," he demanded. "Say you're not leaving." He pushes me further onto the bed as he traps my arms and stares down at me. I stayed silent, his face crumpled for half a second, then he masked it with anger. "Coward," he said quietly, "you won't even be honest with me." He pushed back from the bed like it had burned him, packing the room, dragging a hand through his hair. "I was enough before," he said, "before you decided you needed more." That was the lie he needed to believe. The room felt smaller, heavier, full of words that couldn't be taken back, even without a single hand laid on me. For a split second, unwanted, uninvited, my mind betrayed me. I imagined leaning up and closing the distance. Imagined his mouth softening instead of hardening, imagined him meeting me instead of pushing me away. The thought hit like heat and shame all at once. I hated myself for it, for wanting comfort from the very person whose anger was swallowing the room. My body reacted before I could stop it, heart racing, breath shallow, and I saw it flicker across his face. Realization that not only did he want this, but I also needed this too. He kissed me with tongue and I responded in kind. I must have daydreamed too long, cause Tate yelled at me, bringing me back to the present, where instead of a lover kissing me was a jealous teen boy, terrified that I was already gone from his life in bed. What I saw on Tate's face was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It wasn't awe, not desire, fury. His jaw tightened, eyes darkening. My daydream, he interpreted, was my way of avoiding his question. I stared past him, grounding myself, reminding myself what was real, not the fantasy, not the longing, but the danger of mistaking closeness for safety again. "Who's Mark?" he demanded. The question wasn't curiosity, it was accusation, sharp and childish and loud. "Do you like him more than me?" The way he said it, too fast, too needy, made him sound like a 10-year-old who just realized he wasn't the center of the universe anymore. I laughed, it slipped out of me short and breathless, the wrong sound at the wrong time. His face twisted. "Don't laugh," he snapped. "Who is he?" I tried to pivot, tried to soften it. "Tate, drop it." He didn't. "Who is he?" Each word was carved out slowly, over-enunciated, his jaw tight enough that I could see spit gathering at the corners of his mouth. He was vibrating with it, jealousy so concentrated it barely fit inside him. "A friend," I said. "A friend," he echoed, mocking. "Funny how you didn't bother mentioning him until he's picking you up before sunrise." I felt it then, the panic under the rage, the terror he was trying to smother by being louder, meaner, bigger. "You don't get to interrogate me," I said, steadier than I felt. His eyes flicked over me like he was counting exits, like he was already imagining me gone. "You wear his red coat and make plans with Mark that don't include me. We've been close for a decade and a half," he spits. The words come out like an accusation, as I've personally betrayed history itself. His eyes narrow, then flick, memory clicking into place. "Mark," he says slowly. I feel it land. "Isn't he the guy who called during Emily's dinner?" The way he says her name is pointed, deliberate. "Yeah," I admit. Something ugly flashes across his face. So let me get this straight, he says, voice rising. The first night we're back together where you belong in my bed, back in my room, you disappear before sunrise to spend time with a guy you met last week. He sees, but there's no love in it, it's sharp, wounded. That's what I'm worth now, he snaps. A placeholder until something better calls you.
Tate.
No, he cuts in, stepping closer. You don't get to shrug this off. His hands curl into fists at his sides like he's holding himself back from grabbing onto anything, me, the past, the truth. I've been here, he says hoarsely, every version of you, every mess, every phase. His voice cracks just slightly, and it only makes him angrier. And you walk out like I'm optional. I see it then clear as day. He's not jealous because I left, he's jealous because I could. I love you, Tate, I say. He hears it the way we've said it for years. I hear it the way people fall apart over. He's never had to share me, not in 15 years, not at his house, not in his bed, not in the way our lives bent automatically around each other. Everything used to orbit us, meals, weekends, summers, silence. He lifts his hands and cups my head like he's afraid I'll vanish if he lets go. His thumbs press into my temples, grounding, desperate. Don't go, he says, and the plea cracks through his voice before he can stop it. You're my favorite person in the whole wide world, Noe. I inhale, ready to say something that would change everything. The phone rings. His eyes flick away from mine instantly, sharp and alert, locking onto the sound like it's a threat. Suspicion hardens his face. He drops his hands and lunges for the phone before I can move, jealousy already burning through him, fast, possessive, terrified of a name lighting up the screen that isn't his. I hope whoever called was someone I wasn't friends with stupidly, that it's a wrong number. A telemarketer, anyone, but the second the caller speaks, Tate's face changes, it's subtle, a hardening around the eyes, his jaw locked like something inside him just broke loose. Hello, he says. A pause. Then flat and cold, he's not available, call again later. He doesn't wait for a response. He slams the phone back into its cradle hard enough to make it rattle and swears under his breath. Fuck it. The word hangs between us, thick and ugly. He won't look at me. He paces once, hand dragging through his hair like he's trying to tear the thought out of his head. I don't need him to say it. I know it was Mark, or Maya, someone who isn't him. And in that moment I understand exactly what scares him most, not that I'll choose someone else but that I already have the option. Was it for me, I ask, keeping my voice light, innocent, knowing full well I'm poking a hornet's nest. Tate doesn't answer. His jaw is tight, his back half-turned, clearly not in the mood to take messages or explanations. And as I stepped back, closing the door gently so he wouldn't fall further, I realized how little I really had a say in any of it. He didn't even have to be awake to dominate the space, and somehow I was entirely his. A few nights later I was sleeping in the spare room, finally starting to feel like I had some space of my own, when a loud scuffle outside my door jolted me awake. My heart jumped into my throat. Someone was moving quickly down the hall, tripping over what sounded like a solid body. This was the second incident that week that involved Tate lying on my door to sleep in the hallway. I heard someone say, "Go to your bed, Romeo, not again with you." "Fuck you," Tate's voice roared low and furious. I froze under the covers, my pulse hammering. The sound of bodies bumping against the walls, feet scrambling, and the muffled thud of someone hitting the floor made my stomach churn. I peeked through the crack of the door, holding my breath. In the dim light from the hallway I could make out the silhouette of Tate, towering and furious, his fists clenched, packing in controlled anger. Whoever had tripped over him, my guess, an unsuspecting guest or one of the servants, was now scrambling to their feet, clearly terrified. Tate didn't yell more than the one curse, but the fury in his tone said everything. His body radiated control, possession, and a kind of violent protectiveness that left no doubt anyone getting near me or crossing the line of his territory would regret it. Tate's hand had turned my doorknob. I froze, holding my breath. The knob rattled slightly against the lock, a soft metallic click echoing in the quiet room. He tried it again, harder this time, and I could almost hear the frustration in the quiet sigh that followed. The door held. The next morning, the house was alive with activity, though the air still carried the tension from the previous night. Tate's relatives were lingering, moving about the kitchen and living areas, but one voice stood out above the rest, Uncle Joey. He was laughing, but there was a sharp edge to it, like he was trying to make light of something that could have been serious. I swear, Joey said, shaking his head with a mix of amusement and exasperation, I almost broke my neck again last night on my way to the bathroom. Tripped over him a second time this week, sleeping in the hallway on top of your doorframe, Noah. What the hell, man? Tate didn't even blink. His hazel eyes flicked briefly toward Joey, calm and controlled, though the tension radiating from him made the hair on my arms stand on end. He didn't need to move. His presence alone carried a threat so subtle yet palpable that even Uncle Joey faltered for a heartbeat. Joey leaned toward Terrence, still chuckling but now with a touch of concern in his voice. Terrence, you really need to deal with this before the gossip starts. People are going to talk if they hear about your son sleeping in the hallway like some pussy-whipped lover boy. The family's reputation is at stake, and you know how everyone loves to exaggerate. And honestly, his protectiveness toward Noah, it's inappropriate for a guy. It's weird. You can't have him acting like this around everyone. Terrence, as always, remained calm. He lifted his eyes from his coffee, expression unreadable. He didn't scold, didn't intervene, didn't even glance at Tate with disapproval. Just a quiet, measured exhale. Handle it yourself, he said, voice flat and indifferent, before returning to his newspaper as if the conversation were trivial. I watched from my chair, heart racing. Tate didn't respond verbally, didn't even flinch, but I could feel his eyes on me, a silent reminder that I was entirely within his control. Anyone else might have laughed at Joey's story, teased me, or scolded Tate, but not Terrence, and certainly not Tate. Joey shook his head, muttering under his breath as he moved away, kids these days, and that boy is terrifying. Even in the humor there was fear, and the implication that Tate's obsession with me wasn't normal only made the tension in the room heavier. I tried to eat, but my stomach was tied in knots. I realized again how little anyone outside Tate mattered when he claimed something. Terrence said nothing, and Tate didn't need to. His dominance was already obvious. I was caught between awe, fear, and frustration, all tangled up in the inescapable reality of his obsession with me. Tate's relatives were still lingering in the kitchen, and Uncle Joey couldn't resist pushing one last jab. He leaned back in his chair, smirking at Tate, and said, "Tate, sleep in your own room from now on. Enough of this hallway theatrics. You're making everyone nervous." Tate's black eyes snapped toward him, sharp and dangerous. His jaw tightened and the air in the room seemed to tense. "Go fuck yourself, Joey," he said, voice low but dripping with venom, "and mind your own business." Tate's black eyes snapped toward Uncle Joey, dangerous and unyielding. He didn't just glare, he flipped him off with deliberate contempt, the gesture sharp and deliberate. "I'll sleep where I want," he said. Voice low, cold, and edged with fury, "and there's nothing you can do about it." The room fell silent. Even the clatter of forks and plates seemed to pause as everyone processed the intensity radiating from him. Joey's smirk faltered for a moment, his teasing attitude slipping under the weight of Tate's sheer audacity. Tate leaned forward, jaw tight, the air around him practically vibrating with defiance. "If you don't like it," he continued, eyes glinting like steel, "pack your bags and get the fuck out." I shrank in my chair, stomach twisting. I knew better than anyone what Tate was capable of when provoked, and the sheer dominance in that room, his presence, his claim, made it impossible to breathe freely. No one dared argue, no one dared challenge him. Terrence, as usual, sipped his coffee with measured calm, giving nothing away. Tate's fury was his own to wield, and we all understood who the real authority in the room was. Uncle Joey leaned back, shaking his head, and said in a stern, almost fatherly tone, "Your behavior, young man, is inappropriate and unnatural for an adult man to do. Sleeping in hallways, hovering over someone else's space, it's not normal. You need to grow up." Tate's eyes snapped to him, black and sharp. Every inch of him radiated danger and disdain. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. Instead, he leaned forward, voice low and dripping contempt. "Says the man whore who fucked my side piece of high school ass and screws every pussy in sight," he spat, every word cutting. "You are in no position to lecture me, twat." The room froze, even the clatter of silverware seemed to pause. Joey's smirk faltered, the teasing bravado he usually carried nowhere to be found. Tate's words weren't just an insult, they were a strike, precise and devastating. I'm just saying," Joey stammered, trying to salvage his authority, but Tate cut him off with a flick of his hand and a glare so sharp it could have sliced glass. "Save your breath, old man, don't lecture me about control, about boundaries or what's normal. You've got zero ground to stand on." I shrank in my chair, stomach twisting. My pulse hammered in my ears as I watched the exchange, knowing full well Tate could make this room his kingdom with a look, a word, or a gesture. Terrence didn't lift a finger, he never did. Silent approval or maybe simple indifference hung in the air like a weight that pressed everyone down. Joey leaned forward, voice sharp and unwavering. "I forbid this from going on," he stated, planting his hands firmly on the table. "Do you understand me, boy?" Tate didn't respond at first. Silence stretched across the room like a taut wire, everyone sensing the storm ready to break. Joey's stare was unrelenting, his tone carrying the weight of authority, or at least the authority he believed he had. Then Tate smirked. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and held up his middle finger, flipping Joey off in the most defiant, contemptuous way possible. No words, no hesitation, just pure, unshakable audacity. Joey's face paled for a moment, a flush of disbelief creeping in. "You little coo," he started, but the words died in his throat. He realized painfully that Tate wasn't intimidated and never would be. Joey's frustration finally boiled over. He slammed his hand down on the table and stood up, eyes blazing. "Enough of this, Tate," he shouted, and before anyone could react, his hand swung across Tate's face. The sharp smack echoed through the dining room, my mouth dropped open, I could hardly believe what I had just seen. Tate froze for a heartbeat, hand instinctively rising to his cheek, a stunned expression flashing across his features. Then, lightning fast, everything shifted. With a powerful kick, he drove his heel into Joey's groin. Joey doubled over with a strangled grunt, the color draining from his face, and a stunned silence fell over the room. I sat frozen in my chair, heart hammering, unable to breathe. The adults in the room were frozen too, Terrence still calm but alert, the other relatives blinking in disbelief. No one had expected Tate to react like this, not with words, not with fists, and certainly not with his signature ruthless, immediate retaliation. Before anyone could recover, Tate bolted. He ran out of the dining room, almost crashing into the hallway, his boots clattering against the floorboards. The chaos he left behind was palpable. Joey hunched over in pain, the family shocked into silence, and me sitting there, a mix of terror, awe, and helplessness tightening in my chest. "Excuse me, I have a punishment I need to give my mouthy nephew," Joey groaned, clutching himself as he staggered after Tate upstairs, his face twisted in a mix of pain and anger. The hallway was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that makes your chest tighten. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then excused myself to check on Tate, even as Terrence's calm voice came from the kitchen. "Sit down, Noah." "I need to," I muttered, already moving toward the stairs. Terrence didn't argue. His measured silence always left the power in Tate's hands or feet, as it turned out. Upstairs, voices echoed down the hall. Joey's tone was sharp, angry, and commanding, but Tate's low, dangerous growl cut through it. Peeking around the corner, I froze. Joey had grabbed Tate, pressing him against the wall by the throat. Joey's words came out sharp, though I couldn't make them all out. One thing was clear, he was ordering Tate to sleep alone, to leave me alone, and calling him a homosexual slur with venomous emphasis. Tate's response was instant, violent, and terrifying. With a swift motion, he kneed Joey in the groin again. Joey doubled over, groaning in pain, staggering backward. "I'll do anything, sleep with anyone I want," Tate yelled, voice echoing down the hallway. "Fuck you." Before I could react, Tate spun on his heel and ran to his bedroom, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Silence fell again, heavy and oppressive, broken only by Joey's groans and the faint shuffle of someone trying to recover from the blow. I stood frozen in the hallway, heart hammering. The chaos, the fury, and the raw power Tate wielded left me both terrified and helplessly fascinated. Terrence remained in the kitchen, calm and unreadable, sipping his coffee as if the violent confrontation upstairs were nothing at all. I realized once again that Tate owned this house, every boundary, and even me. There was no arguing with him, no one could stop him, and I, caught squarely in his orbit, could only watch, part fear, part awe, and part something I didn't want to admit I felt. Joey's eyes caught mine and he forced a weak smile despite the lingering pain from earlier. "Hey, want to get ice cream in town?" he asked, voice tentative, trying to change the mood. "Tate needs some time alone." I opened my mouth to answer, hesitating. I. Before I could finish, a sharp, commanding voice cut through the silence from upstairs. "Noah, come here, I need you now." I had heard Tate yelling for me from upstairs, his voice urgent, carrying that tense edge that always made my chest flutter. It wasn't just calling, it was demanding, almost like he couldn't breathe until I answered. I turned to Uncle Joey with a small, sheepish smile and said, "Maybe some other time," my words soft and light though my heart was racing. He gave a knowing shrug, clearly used to Tate's theatrics, and I let my gaze drift back to the stairs, already feeling the pull of him. I started up slowly, each step deliberate, savoring the sound of my own footsteps mixing with Tate's voice echoing down the hall. By the time I reached the landing, Tate was calling my name again, louder now, tinged with frustration but threaded with relief. I smiled to myself, a warm, mischievous grin, knowing exactly what awaited me at the top. My stomach twisted pleasantly at the thought of him, tense, impatient, and yet so full of that protective, clinging energy I'd always loved. My hands lingered on the banister for a moment longer than needed, delaying the inevitable meeting just to feel that little thrill of anticipation swell between us. I tried to think of something, anything, to argue, to resist, to make him see me as more than a subordinate, more than the object of his orders. But the warmth of his body pressed to mine, the weight of him holding me in place, the slow, soothing motion of his hand in my hair overpowered every rational thought. I was a prisoner to his presence, caught between fear, obedience, and the almost unbearable, confusing intimacy of being noticed in such a precise, deliberate way. And yet, as his fingers traced patterns through my hair, I realized something darker, something I didn't want to admit. I wanted him to notice me. I wanted his hand in my hair. I wanted the brush of his warmth across my body, even as every rational thought screamed that this was wrong, that I should pull away. That I should fight, but I couldn't. Not when he spoke with such absolute certainty, not when his hand lingered just so, not when every touch reminded me how completely in his control I was. Even as fear coiled tight around my chest, even as my mind spun with confusion and frustration, a small, terrified part of me trembled at the thought that Tate had chosen to focus on me. That this contradictory mix of domination and tenderness, of anger and care, of absolute authority and intimate attention was all directed at me. Later that night in his bed, I pressed my face against his bare chest, trying to disappear into the weight of him, trying to reconcile the terror, the heat, and the impossible warmth of his hand through my hair. Every nerve screamed, every instinct urged me to flee, and yet somehow I was rooted in place, trapped by the strange gravity of him and the undeniable truth of being noticed. After Tate saw Noah go into the spare room that night, he confronted me and dragged me down to his bedroom. He made it abundantly clear that he wasn't going to tolerate any shenanigans or any attempts on my part to assert my independence. "You can simply do the two things I ask and I'll reward you," Tate murmured, his warm breath brushing against my temple. His nose pressed gently into the side of my scalp and he peppered soft kisses along the delicate skin of my temple. There was a rhythm to it, almost hypnotic, a mix of tenderness and possessiveness that made my chest tighten and my stomach twist. His words, controlling and absolute, clashed violently with the intimacy of his touch, creating a storm in my mind I couldn't quite navigate. Tate went on with his speech. "This isn't just a sleeping arrangement," he continued, voice low and deliberate. "I could get anybody to sleep here. People would dehumanize themselves, they would use their bodies to be here. I wouldn't have to give them anything but sex and a little attention, and they'd spend the next 5 years sleeping here." I felt my pulse spike. 5 years sleeping here with him. The thought should have made my skin crawl, my instincts screaming to run, but instead my body felt strangely weighted, caught between fear, disbelief, and a magnetic pull I couldn't name. I tried to organize my thoughts, tried to rationalize the words he was saying. He was right in one way. People would do anything to be near him. I wasn't the first and I wouldn't be the last, but somehow he had me. I could get anyone to do these two simple things you're incapable of doing, and my father would turn a blind eye if I'm the best son in academia and outside these doors. "I don't want girls or substitutes, just our relationship," he said, the word slow, deliberate, trembling on his tongue, hesitant, almost reverent, "is sacred, special." His eyes locked onto Noah's, burning with that strange intensity that always made Noah's chest tight. "I don't want to get angry. I don't want to have to kick you out of my house for life, because you can't follow simple directions." Noah swallowed, feeling the weight of those words press into him. He could see the unspoken promise behind them. Anger could come, silence could fracture, but so could something else, something rare, precious. He wanted to argue, to push back, but his throat went dry. "But," he continued, his voice lowering to a whisper, almost intimate, "if you can do as you're told, we'll do this, maybe, we'll do our relationship, this sleeping arrangement, for the rest of our lives." Noah's heart skipped and a cold thrill ran through him. The rest of our lives. He thought it over, imagining it, not just the fleeting moments of quiet triumph or comfort he had sometimes stolen in the night, but all of it. Waking up next to him, the sharp scent of coffee in the morning, the silent understanding in a glance, the inevitability of every argument and every reconciliation stretching endlessly forward. Could he survive that? Could he endure it? Or was he already too entangled to ever let go? The idea was terrifying, intoxicating. Forever, the word echoed in his head like a pulse. Forever in this house under this gaze within the orbit of this person who could be cruel, protective, maddening, and indispensable all at once. And yet, a part of him ached to hear it, to feel the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the chaos and the fear could coexist with something more, something lasting, something permanent. He didn't answer right away. He only stared, and inside his mind kept repeating the phrase, "the rest of our lives." The words felt heavy, binding, yet strangely comforting. He wasn't sure if he was ready, if anyone could ever be ready, but the thought refused to let him go. The word relationship lingered in the air, heavy and strange. I wanted to ask what he meant. Did he see me as more than just a plaything, more than a warm body to keep him company? But even as the thought formed, doubt crept in. He had said earlier that he could replace me in 5 minutes, that he didn't need me for anything but obedience and proximity. My mind spun in circles. "I can get anyone to sleep next to me, Noah," Tate said, voice smooth but laced with smugness. His gaze was sharp, calculating, as if weighing every reaction before he spoke. "I don't need to have a relationship with them. I don't even need to see them as a human being. They can be a body, or a whole for all I care. But you," his eyes softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. "I'm offering you a relationship," emphasized, "a relationship that would redeem your humanity and your equality with me." Tate wanted to explain, but he wasn't good at voicing his feelings. "I don't need to feel anything for the body next to mine," Tate said, his voice flat and indifferent, as if stating a simple truth. "I've pushed hookers off my bed before, shoved them with my foot onto the floor without a second thought." His gaze stayed locked on mine, steady and unblinking. "But you." There was the slightest pause, just enough to make my chest tighten. "You're different because I love you, Noe. You're the only body that sleeps here, the only one I allow." His voice lowered, quieter now but somehow heavier. "And that matters." The words settled over me and I couldn't shake them. The only one. It should have felt good, like being chosen, like being set apart, but instead it twisted inside me, sharp and confusing. I didn't know if I felt relieved or trapped, maybe both. My mind immediately went back to what he'd said before, how easily I could be replaced, how little I meant beyond proximity and obedience. The contradiction made my head spin. If I were so replaceable, then why was I the only one allowed here? Why did he say it like it meant something more, like it carried weight? Tate stated it like a fact, not a question. "Someone will sleep next to me every night. I hope you choose to make it exclusively you." His voice didn't waver as he leaned in, pressing a slow, deliberate kiss to Noah's cheek. Noah's breath caught, the words settling heavier than the touch itself. He didn't move right away, didn't pull back, didn't lean in, just stood there, caught somewhere between hesitation and something warmer, softer, harder to name. "That sounds less like hope," Noah said quietly, eyes lowering for a moment, "and more like a decision you've already made." Tate's hand brushed lightly against Noah's sleeve, grounding and steady. "It is my decision," he replied. "Yours is whether you want it too." Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It felt full of possibility, of pressure, of something neither of them was quite ready to say out loud. I tried to make sense of it, turning the words over and over in my head. The only body that sleeps here, not the only person, not the only one he cared about, just the only one he kept close, the only one he didn't discard, and somehow that felt worse and better at the same time. A strange warmth crept into my chest despite everything, despite the coldness of what he'd admitted. Because no matter how he framed it, no matter how detached he tried to sound, there was something in the way he said it that felt like possession. Like I wasn't interchangeable after all, like I had crossed some invisible line no one else had, but that thought scared me more than anything. Ever since Tate was young, his looks, brains, wealth, self-confidence, sex appeal, and effortless charisma drew people to him like gravity was a force he controlled. It wasn't just that he was attractive. It was the way he moved, the way his eyes lingered half a second too long, the way his voice dipped softer when he wanted something. Girls stumbled over their words when he spoke to them, boys tried too hard to impress him, and even adults, teachers, neighbors, strangers treated him like someone already important. Conversations would falter when he walked past. Attention bending toward him without permission. Tate didn't chase admiration, it came to him, and he learned early how to shape it, how to pull it closer, how to use every inch of himself like a carefully honed instrument. He loved the art of seduction, not always in a physical way, but in the control of it, the quiet power of knowing he could make someone feel chosen, seen, and undone. A glance, a smirk, a casual touch on the shoulder. He understood the language of desire before most people even knew it existed. And because it came so easily, so naturally, he never had to value it. People were moments to him, brief flickers of attention he could ignite and then leave behind. No one held him longer than he allowed. No one mattered long enough to change him. Girls blurred together as temporary distractions, boys as passing competition or background noise, and the world became something he could navigate, bend, and win without ever truly investing himself in it. But Noah was different in the one way that mattered. He didn't enter Tate's life as someone to conquer. He was already there, constant, close, real, and somehow that made everything more dangerous. Tate didn't try to seduce Noah the way he did everyone else. He didn't need to, it was in the quiet things, the way he said Noah's name softer than anyone else's, the way his attention lingered without feeling like a performance, the way he stayed. When Tate looked at him, it wasn't the same look he gave the rest of the world. It was steadier, warmer, like something unspoken lived underneath it. And that difference, subtle but undeniable, made Noah's mouth go dry every single time. Because Noah saw both versions of him, the untouchable, magnetic boy who could have anyone, and the one who lay beside him at night, close enough to feel his breathing slow, who didn't pull away from his tears, who didn't laugh when Noah was soft or vulnerable. Tate, who the world couldn't hold, stayed when Noah needed him, and that contradiction rooted itself deep inside Noah's chest. It wasn't just an attraction. It was confusion, longing, comfort, and ache all tangled together. Tate made everything feel heightened. Every glance, every word, every moment shared felt like it mattered more than it should. Noah would tell himself to step back, to breathe, to remember who Tate was to everyone else. But then Tate would look at him that way again, or sit just a little too close, or soften in a way no one else ever got to see, and all of Noah's resolve would unravel. Noah fell in love not just with Tate's beauty or charm, but with the version of him that seemed to exist only in those quiet, unguarded spaces in Tate's bed or in their shared basement. The boy who didn't have to try. The boy who didn't walk away. The boy who held his emotions without making him feel small for having them. And once Noah felt that, once he believed, even for a second, that he mattered differently, it became impossible to stop. Noah still remembered the first time Tate said those 3 words. It had been a few days after Tate's 8th birthday, in that strange, in-between stretch of childhood where everything still felt simple, but something deeper had already started shifting underneath. It was about a month before Noah would even understand what he felt, before the word, love, would take root inside him and refuse to let go. That evening had started like any other. Uncle Joey stood in the kitchen doorway, keys spinning around his finger, calling out casually, "Hey, Tate, I'm heading out for ice cream. You want to come with me?" His voice was light, expectant, because Tate always said yes. Time with Joey meant laughter, attention, and being the center of something fun. Noah had been sitting at the table, half listening, not expecting anything different. But Tate didn't answer right away. Noah looked up, noticing the hesitation first. Tate was watching him, not Joey, his gaze lingering in a way that felt oddly focused, like he was weighing something. It made Noah shift in his seat, suddenly self-conscious without knowing why. "I can't," Tate said finally, his tone casual but firm. "I'm going to hang out with Noah. We're building a pillow fort downstairs." Noah blinked. They hadn't planned anything, not a word of it. Joey raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Since when?" he asked, glancing between them. "You never turned down ice cream with your beloved favorite uncle." Tate just shrugged, but his eyes flicked back to Noah again, steady and strange in a way Noah couldn't quite place, just felt like it. There was something in the way he said it, final, almost dismissive, that made Joey laugh under his breath. All right, he said, holding up his hands. "Guess I've been replaced." He ruffled Tate's hair as he passed, then looked at Noah with a small smile. "You're in charge tonight, huh?" Noah didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded, still trying to process why Tate had chosen him over something he clearly wanted. And then Joey was gone. The house quieted. Tate didn't waste a second. "Come on," he said, already heading toward the basement stairs. Noah followed, a little confused, a little curious, and increasingly aware that Tate kept glancing back at him, not in his usual distracted way, but directly, intentionally, like he was studying him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Noah finally asked as they reached the bottom of the stairs. Tate didn't answer right away. He just gave a small, unreadable smile and started pulling cushions off the couch. "You ask too many questions," he said lightly. They built the fort together, stacking pillows and blankets, turning the dim basement into something softer, quieter, theirs. It should have felt normal. It was the kind of thing they'd done 100 times before, but it didn't, not that night, because Tate kept looking at him. Every time Noah glanced up, he caught it, that same focused, almost thoughtful expression, like Tate was trying to figure something out. It wasn't teasing, it wasn't playful. It made Noah's chest feel tight in a way he didn't understand yet. "Seriously," Noah said after a while, half laughing to cover the strange feeling creeping up on him, "what is your problem tonight?" Tate just shook his head again, softer this time. Nothing, he said, but his voice didn't quite match the word. Once the fort was built and the last pillow was carefully wedged into place, the whole thing standing just barely stable, Tate took a step back like he was admiring their work. Noah did the same, brushing his hands together, feeling oddly proud of what they'd made. It felt like their own little world, soft, quiet, hidden. And then, without warning, Tate lunged. Noah barely had time to react before he was knocked backward onto the carpet, a surprised laugh bursting out of him as Tate tackled him full force. "Tate!" he shouted, already laughing, already trying to shove him off. Wrestling had always been their thing. It wasn't unusual, wasn't new. They'd been doing it for as long as Noah could remember, but that didn't make it any easier, because Tate was impossible to beat. Noah twisted, trying to roll them over, grabbing for Tate's arm the way he'd seen him do 100 times before. But Tate anticipated it instantly, shifting his weight, slipping out of Noah's grip as he'd already planned 3 moves ahead. "Too slow," Tate teased, breathless but confident. "I'm not," Noah tried to argue, cutting himself off as he pushed harder, trying to pin Tate's shoulder to the ground. For a split second it almost worked, almost. But Tate twisted his hips, hooked Noah's leg and flipped him over in one smooth motion. Suddenly Noah was on his back, the air knocked out of him in a soft oof, and Tate was above him, perfectly balanced, completely in control. Tate straddled him easily, knees planted, his weight pressing Noah down just enough to keep him stuck. His hands caught Noah's wrists, pinning them briefly before releasing them like he didn't even need the advantage. "Give up?" Tate asked, looking down at him with that bright, confident grin, the one that said he already knew the answer. Noah glared up at him, breath uneven, cheeks flushed from the effort. "No," he said stubbornly, "I'm not giving up." Tate raised an eyebrow, amused. "You sure?" "I could beat you," Noah insisted, even though they both knew that wasn't true. Tate let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. "You wish." And then his expression shifted, just a little, mischievous. "Oh no," Noah said immediately, eyes widening as he recognized that look. "Don't." Too late, Tate's fingers found his ribs instantly. "No, Tate." Laughter exploded out of Noah before he could stop it, his body jerking beneath him as Tate started tickling him mercilessly, quick, precise, like he knew exactly where to press to make it unbearable. "You going to give up now?" Tate asked, barely holding back his own laughter as Noah squirmed beneath him. "Sense stop," Noah gasped, trying to twist away, but Tate shifted with him effortlessly, keeping him pinned, keeping the advantage like it was nothing. "I can't hear you," Tate teased, digging his fingers in again. "No, Tate." Noah's laughter broke into uncontrollable bursts, his words dissolving into breathless giggles. You'll make me." Tate laughed, not letting up for a second. "Make you what?" Noah shook his head, trying to curl in on himself, but Tate's weight kept him stretched out, exposed to every ticklish spot he couldn't defend. "Stoop, I mean it." "Then say it," Tate shot back, grinning. "Say you give up." "No," Noah insisted, even as he laughed harder, his whole body shaking now, completely at Tate's mercy. Tate leaned down slightly closer, his voice softer but no less teasing. "You're stubborn, you know that." Noah tried to glare at him again, but it didn't work through the laughter. "You're worse." "Probably," Tate admitted easily, and then, just to prove it, he tickled him again right at the same spot. Noah yelped, laughter spilling out louder than before, his resistance crumbling but not quite breaking. "Oh, okay, okay." "Okay what?" Tate pressed. But Noah shook his head again, still laughing, still refusing. "I'm not giving up." Tate paused for a second, looking down at him, something impressed flickering through his expression. "Wow," he said, almost thoughtful. "You really won't, huh?" Noah just smiled through his breathless laughter, exhausted but determined. "Nope." For a moment, Tate didn't move. He just stayed there, still pinning him, still holding him in place, but the tickling stopped. And in that brief quiet, with Noah catching his breath beneath him and the fort standing just beside them, it felt like something small but important had passed between them. Tate shook his head with a soft laugh. "You're unbelievable." Noah grinned up at him, still a little breathless. "And you still didn't win." Tate smirked. "Oh, I definitely won." But he didn't start tickling him again. "Because if I were the only one, then there was no one else to take my place when things went wrong. No buffer, no escape, no easy way out. If I stayed, it would just be this, him and me over and over again, locked into whatever this relationship was supposed to be. And I couldn't stop thinking about it, about what it meant to be the only one he let stay. The only one he didn't push away with his foot like I was nothing. Did that make me important, or just harder to get rid of?" Noah's mind didn't quiet when Tate spoke. It fractured, splintering into memories he'd spent years trying to outrun. They used to laugh at us, not quietly either, not behind closed doors. It was the kind of laughter that followed him down hallways that lingered just long enough for him to hear his own name tangled up in it. Two 18-year-old boys, same bed, too close, too easy. Platonic, Tate would say, like that word erased everything else. It built a wall strong enough to keep the truth, or whatever this was, on the safe side of things. But the way people looked at them said otherwise. The way people looked at Noah said everything. They called me his bed warmer. The phrase echoed now, louder than it ever had back then. It wasn't just a joke, it had been a label. A role people decided he fit into without asking him, without caring what it felt like to carry it. In public, Tate never softened it. If anything, he leaned into the narrative people expected, wearing it like armor. When someone made a crude remark about Noah being nothing more than convenient, Tate would give a short, dismissive laugh and shrug. "He's around because he's useful," he'd say, voice flat, uninterested. "Don't overthink it." He never lingered, never defended, never let even a flicker of something deeper show. To everyone else, Noah was an afterthought, replaceable, insignificant, barely worth a second glance. But in private, the truth unraveled completely. The moment the doors closed and the world fell away, Tate's entire demeanor shifted, subtle at first, then undeniable. His attention was fixed on Noah like gravity, constant and unyielding. He noticed everything, the way Noah breathed when he was tired, the smallest changes in his expression, the quiet things he never said out loud. There was nothing casual about it. "You shouldn't listen to them," Tate murmured once, voice low, as he brushed his fingers carefully through Noah's hair, a touch so gentle it contradicted everything he let the world believe. "They don't get to define you." Noah glanced at him, uncertain. "You don't exactly correct them." Tate's gaze softened, rare, unguarded, almost reverent. "I don't correct them," he said quietly. "I don't need to correct them because they don't deserve to know what you are to me." He drew closer, not forceful, not demanding, intent, like being near Noah wasn't a choice but a need he never questioned. "To them, you can be nothing," Tate continued, his voice steady but softer than it had ever been in public. "That keeps you safe." His hand stilled against Noah's cheek, thumb brushing lightly, carefully, like something precious, irreplaceable. "But don't confuse that with what you are to me. Something soft, something irreplaceable, something that existed for someone else's comfort." Noah's stomach twisted, because part of him had always hated how close that felt to the truth, not because Tate treated him like nothing, but because Tate never explained what he was. What was I to him? The question pressed harder now, sharper under the weight of everything happening. A friend didn't hold someone like this, didn't pin them down and call it love, didn't blur every line and then act as if the lines had never existed. And yet, he kept me. That was the part that never made sense. Tate didn't need anyone. Tate, who moved through the world as it bent around him. Tate, who could have had anyone, anything, any version of a life that fit neatly into expectations, still chose this, chose him. Noah swallowed, his throat tight. "Why me?" The question had lived in him for years, unanswered, growing heavier every time Tate pulled him closer without giving him a reason he could hold on to. Because Noah knew what everyone else saw, white trash. The words hit like they always did, familiar, worn in but never dull, out of place. He felt it in rooms he didn't belong in conversations that stopped when he got too close, in the way people looked at his clothes, his hands, the parts of him that didn't match Tate's world. Living above my station, that one lingered the longest, because Tate's world wasn't just different, it was structured, built on rules no one had to say out loud, money, status, bloodlines that mattered in ways Noah had never understood but always felt. Tate fit into that world effortlessly. Noah disrupted it just by existing in it. And still, he brought me into his bed, night after night, like it didn't matter, like Noah didn't break every expectation tied to Tate's name, his family, and his life, like none of it applied when the lights were off and the door was closed. Noah's chest rose slowly under Tate's arm, his thoughts turning heavier, more tangled. Was I a secret, or worse, was I something he didn't think needed explaining? That possibility cut deeper than anything else, because it meant Tate didn't see the difference, didn't see the gap between them. Didn't see what it cost Noah to stand in that space, to exist in a world that kept reminding him he wasn't meant to be there. And now, held in place, I was told "I love you," which should explain everything, but it didn't, like it justified the grip, the control, the certainty in Tate's voice. Noah's thoughts hardened. "Love doesn't erase who I am, it doesn't give you ownership of me, it doesn't turn me into something you get to keep just because you decided I matter." In bed, Tate became quiet and thoughtful. Tate's fingers slid gently over Noah's lips, not harsh enough to hurt, just firm enough to quiet him, to keep him right there in that fragile, shared space between them. "Don't," Tate murmured softly against the shell of Noah's ear, his voice low and steady, a contrast to the intensity behind it. "Don't say anything that makes this smaller than it is." His breath was warm, his chest pressed solidly against Noah's back as they lay tangled together beneath the covers, bare skin meeting bare skin in a way that felt more vulnerable than anything else. Noah's breath caught under Tate's touch, shallow and uneven, his hands curling instinctively around Tate's wrist as if to ground himself. "I could walk away from anyone else," Tate continued, quieter now, his thumb brushing once across Noah's bottom lip before easing the pressure just enough for him to breathe easier. "Anyone, Noe, fake friends people. Whatever they think they are to me, I could drop them like they meant nothing." He pressed a slow kiss just behind Noah's ear, lingering there, "and I wouldn't lose a second of sleep over it." Noah swallowed, his voice barely there. "Tate." "But not you." Tate's arm tightened around his waist, pulling him closer like he needed the reassurance of Noah's body fitting perfectly against his own. "Never you." Another kiss, softer this time, more careful. "You're not something I could ever throw away. You're everything that stays." His hand moved from Noah's mouth to cradle his jaw instead, thumb tracing along his cheek with surprising tenderness. "You're the only thing that's ever felt like mine in a way that matters." Noah's breathing stuttered again, his chest rising against Tate's arm. "You're scaring me," he whispered, though he didn't pull away. If anything, he leaned back further into him. Tate exhaled slowly, like he was trying to soften the weight of his own words. "I'm not trying to," he said, quieter now. "I just need you to understand." He rested his forehead briefly against the back of Noah's head. "You're the love of my life, Noe." The words hung there, heavy and unguarded. Noah's fingers tightened around Tate's arm. "We're only 18, he said faintly, like he needed to say it just to hear how it sounded. "And," Tate replied immediately, a quiet defiance slipping in, though his touch stayed gentle. He turned Noah slightly in his arms so he could see his face, their legs still tangled together under the blanket. "I've lived a lifetime already, Noe. You think that makes it less real?" His gaze softened as he looked at him, all the rough edges he showed, the rest of the world gone in an instant. "I've known you my whole life. There's nothing in me that doesn't already know where I end and where you begin." Noah searched his face, vulnerable and overwhelmed. "Tate, I can't even breathe when you say things like that." Tate's expression shifted, concern flickering through. His hand moved to Noah's chest, resting there lightly. "Hey, slow down," he murmured. "I've got you." His thumb brushed soothing circles, grounding him. "Breathe with me." He inhaled slowly, deliberately, guiding him without forcing. "There you go. Yeah, just like that." After a moment, Noah's breathing steadied, though his eyes were still wide, shining. "You mean it," he said quietly, not really asking. Tate huffed a soft, almost incredulous breath. "I don't say things I don't mean, not to you." He tucked a strand of Noah's hair behind his ear, something gentle and absent-minded. "We're soulmates," he added, quieter now, less forceful, more certain. "You and me, that's not something I'm ever letting go of while I'm alive." Noah's voice trembled. "You don't get to decide that all by yourself." Tate held his gaze, not angry, just unwavering. "Maybe not," he admitted, "but I know what I feel, and what I feel is, you're it for me." His hand slid back around Noah's waist, pulling him in again, returning them to that close, protective spooning position. "The rest of the world can do whatever it wants. I don't care. You're my priority. You always have been." Noah let out a shaky breath, his body finally relaxing into Tate's hold. "You're so different with me," he whispered. Tate pressed a soft kiss to the back of his neck. "Yeah," he said simply, "because you're different from everyone else." A quiet settled over them, but it wasn't empty, it was full, warm, and steady. Tate's hand rested over Noah's, their fingers loosely intertwined against his chest, his touch absent-mindedly tracing small patterns like he didn't even realize he was doing it. After a moment, Noah spoke again, softer now. "You're really not going anywhere." Tate tightened his hold just slightly, enough to be felt. "Not from you," he said, "never from you." Noah's mind lingered on those words long after they'd been spoken. "You're the love of my life." He remembered the way Tate had said it, low, urgent, almost like a warning, and yet for someone like Tate, that kind of admission was monumental. Tate was usually so rough, so dismissive of the world, someone who wore his indifference like armor. He teased, he provoked, he put walls up that no one could get through. But with Noah, all that armor fell away, just enough to let a glimpse of something deeper, something rare, shine through. Noah had known Tate was intense, possessive, even terrifying at times. But to hear him voice the depth of his feelings even indirectly made the world shift slightly. It wasn't a casual "I like you" or a careless whisper of affection. This was Tate acknowledging in his own raw, unpolished way that Noah mattered above anyone else. That Noah was more than a friend, more than a companion, he was essential. His jaw tightened, something steadier forming beneath the chaos. Because beneath the insecurity, beneath the years of being told he didn't belong, there was something else. Something that refused to disappear. I am not something you get to have. I remembered an event that had happened a few years earlier when Tate was a week from being 15 and I a mere 14. It had been one of the worst fights we had ever had. After I called Tate a self-absorbed narcissist, he fired back by calling me a troublemaker and an independent opportunist. Neither of us was willing to apologize or back down. We didn't speak to each other for an entire week. The silence between us was suffocating, stretching on far longer than either of us had expected. For two people who were usually inseparable, pretending the other didn't exist was almost as painful as the fight itself. Few nights later, with the sound of hammers and saws echoing faintly from Tate's lavish bedroom, he ended up in the spare room with Noah, sprawling across the bed like he owned every inch of it. The chaos from the construction didn't seem to bother him at all. Instead, it was an excuse to be closer, to wrap himself around Noah and claim him in little ways that felt both possessive and reassuring. His hand traced lazy patterns along Noah's side, brushing over skin, and occasionally tugging him closer. He kissed the tops of Noah's shoulders, nuzzled his neck, and murmured soft, almost absurdly tender things that made Noah's heart skip. Tate was hands-on in the best way, touching, hugging, and holding. Every movement carried intimacy, the kind that said without words, "You're mine, and I love being here with you." When Noah shifted, Tate followed, pressing himself against him, letting their bare skin connect, fingers brushing fingers, hands resting where they felt safest yet most exciting. He peppered small kisses across Noah's temple, jaw, and the corner of his mouth, teasing yet affectionate, as though he couldn't stop himself from showing the depth of his attachment. Noah laughed softly when Tate hugged him tight mid-yawn, smothering him against his chest. "You're ridiculous," he whispered, though the warmth in his chest betrayed how much he loved it. Tate only smirked, pressing another lingering kiss to Noah's temple. "Not ridiculous," he said, voice low, "just yours." Every touch, every whispered word, every soft groan of contentment was a claim and a promise wrapped together. Even amidst the noise and clatter of construction, the spare room became their world, small and private, where Tate's rough exterior melted entirely into the tenderness he reserved just for Noah. Once the construction was finally finished in Tate's bedroom, returning to sleep there felt like stepping back into a world that was both familiar and entirely his own. Tate's suite wasn't just a bedroom. It was massive, sprawling, more like a private Hilton suite than a simple room. It opened into two adjoining rooms, giving it an airy, luxurious feeling, yet tonight it was quiet, intimate, and almost comforting in its emptiness. Noah walked carefully across the polished floor, the soft carpet muffling his steps, and climbed into the bed, shivering slightly under the covers. "You can turn off the light if you want," Tate said with that small, knowing smile that always made Noah's chest tight. His voice was low, warm, and commanding in a way that made it impossible to ignore. Without another word, he shifted closer, pulling Noah into his arms, his warmth radiating through the blankets. Noah leaned into him instinctively, letting himself melt against Tate's chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat grounding him. As Noah's gaze wandered, he noticed something on Tate's wall, a piece he had never seen before. The lamp near the bed cast a golden glow across it, highlighting the meticulous details. It was enormous, a 70x 50-inch commissioned painting, clearly the work of a master artist. His breath caught. It was of a 13-year-old blonde boy sitting on the floor, utterly absorbed in reading comic books. The boy's hair shone under an invisible light, his posture relaxed, his expression alert and innocent. There was something almost magical about the way the artist had captured him, the subtle tilt of the head, the soft glow in the eyes, the gentle curve of a smile. It was as if the canvas itself breathed with life. Noah's heart stuttered when he realized it was him. Or rather, it was a version of himself created by someone who passionately loved and worshipped him. It was rendered with a love and care so precise it almost hurt. He wasn't physically in the room during its creation, wasn't depicted directly, yet every brushstroke, every line seemed to honor him. The comic books, the innocence, the alert, sweet expression, it all screamed Noah without ever saying a word. Even the small details, like the tape lying next to him, hinted at the playful, everyday parts of him that Tate adored. He turned slowly toward Tate, who was watching him intently, a soft, proud smile tugging at his lips. "You painted me?" Noah asked, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. His fingers twitched against the blanket and he couldn't tear his eyes away from the painting. Tate's grin widened, brushing a strand of hair off Noah's forehead. Commissioned it, he said casually, though the satisfaction in his tone was undeniable. Had an expert do it, wanted it to be perfect. He pressed a soft kiss to Noah's temple. That's my Noe, every detail, can't get enough of him. Noah's chest warmed at the words and a shy, incredulous smile spread across his face. It's me, he whispered, almost as if saying it aloud made it real. You really see me like that? Tate's hand slid over Noah's, squeezing gently. See you, I adore you, every bit of you, that painting, that's just a reminder for the world and for me of what you mean to me. He nuzzled into Noah's hair, brushing a kiss over the crown of his head. You make me happy, Noe, everything about you makes me happy. This painting is a symbol of my love for you. Noah's lips curved into a soft, genuine smile, the shiver from earlier forgotten in the warmth of the moment. You really make me happy too, he murmured. Seeing that you think of me like that, he paused, leaning closer into Tate's chest. It feels like, I don't know, like I finally belong somewhere. Tate chuckled, a low, satisfied sound that made the room feel cozier than ever despite its size. You do belong, he said firmly, with me, always with me. His hand stroked Noah's back, rubbing small circles, keeping him close, protective, claiming. And this, he nodded toward the painting, is proof. You're mine, Noe, and I don't care what anyone else says, every bit of you is perfect to me. Noah's heart swelled and he pressed a soft kiss to Tate's collarbone, a tiny but sincere gesture of gratitude and affection. Tate's arms tightened around him in response, murmuring soft, satisfied words into the night. Between the painting, the whispered affirmations, and the warmth of being in Tate's arms, Noah felt utterly seen and utterly loved. The two of them lay there for a long time, wrapped together in the glow of the lamp and the presence of the painting, hands intertwined, hearts aligned, both silently reveling in the quiet intimacy that only they could share. The realization settled into him, quiet but unshakable. Even here, even now, even with Tate's arms still wrapped around him like he thought that closeness meant control. Noah stared ahead, unfocused but grounded in one thing he hadn't been before. My stomach twisted. I froze for a second, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed to ignore him, to stay with Joey and get out of the tension-filled house, but I couldn't. Something about that voice, familiar, dangerous, and magnetic, pulled me toward the stairs. The next day, Tate's two uncles and aunt arrived without much warning, their presence filling the house with noise and expectation. Uncle Joey didn't bother knocking before stepping into Tate's room, pushing the door open with an easy familiarity. There they are, he said warmly, smiling at his two favorite nephews sprawled on the floor, comic books spread between them. For a moment everything felt normal. Then his eyes drifted to the wall, his warm smile dropped. Joey's expression hardened into something sharp and immediate, his gaze locking onto the painting like it was an offense. What's this, Tate? He asked, voice tightening. It's a picture, Tate replied calmly, not even looking up at first. Joey stepped closer, his scowl deepening. Why would you put a non-family member on the wall? This is inappropriate, take it down, immediately. No, Noah said before he could stop himself, his voice quieter but firm. He shifted slightly, glancing at Tate. I like it. Tate finally looked up then, meeting Joey's glare without hesitation. He gave a small, almost dismissive nod. It's a gift, he said evenly, for the most important person in my life. Joey's jaw tightened, and you think that's him? Tate didn't blink, didn't soften, didn't look away. It's not you. It was scandalizing, whisper-worthy in the way only old money scandals ever were, for an heir to a vast fortune to hang a portrait of someone everyone else dismissed as nothing. In their world, boundaries were unspoken but absolute. Boys like Noah didn't wander those halls, didn't sit at long tables set with fragile, priceless china, didn't become part of the visual language of legacy. Charity existed, of course, it always had. There were scholarships, quiet stipends, the occasional taken-in or wards incidents spoken about in hushed, self-congratulatory tones, but those people stayed invisible, carefully kept at the edges. They were never centered, never immortalized, never elevated to the walls where lineage and power were meant to stare back in oil and gold. And yet their Noah was shamelessly framed, deliberate and undeniable. Not hidden, not explained away, displayed as he mattered. That was the real offense. Tate had always kept a portrait of Uncle Joey in that exact place, centered, elevated, unquestioned. It had been there for years, part of the quiet order of the room, like everything else that reflected legacy and expectation. But when Tate turned 13, he took it down without explanation. No announcement, no replacement, just an empty space that no one dared comment on. 2 years later, that space was no longer empty. Now it held Noah, not subtly, not tucked away, framed and deliberate, placed exactly where family was supposed to be honored. Joey stared at it like it was an insult made visible, something that shouldn't exist. Disgust twisted across his face as he stepped forward, anger rising fast and unrestrained. "This is what you replace me with?" he snapped, already reaching for the frame. "Some nobody." Noah shifted where he sat, tension flashing through him, a quiet, instinctive distress he couldn't quite hide. Joey's hand closed around the edge of the painting, starting to pull it from the wall. "Don't!" Tate's voice cut through the room, sharp and absolute. Joey froze, turning slowly. "Excuse me." Tate was already on his feet now, the ease gone from him entirely. There was nothing casual left, only something controlled, cold, and immovable. "I said," he repeated, each word precise, "get out." Joey let out a disbelieving laugh, still gripping the frame. "You're telling me to leave over this?" Tate stepped closer, not raising his voice, not needing to. "You don't touch that," he said. "You don't talk about him, and you don't stay in this room if you can't understand that." For a moment, it looked like Joey might argue, might push, might force it, but something in Tate's expression stopped him. Slowly, reluctantly, Joey let go of the painting. The room felt different after that, quieter but heavier. The line had been drawn, and there was no pretending it hadn't. Dinner with the Blue family was polished, elegant, and quietly suffocating. Noah was placed at the least desirable seat along the long table, far from Tate, positioned just enough out of reach to feel it, but still close enough that their feet could brush beneath the tablecloth, a small, hidden tether in an otherwise hostile room. Tate barely touched his food, absently drowning it in lemon as if the sharpness gave him something to focus on other than the eyes that kept drifting toward Noah. And they did drift again and again, curious, disapproving, measuring. Noah felt it with every movement, every breath, like he had stepped into a space that had already decided he didn't belong. Aunt Julia broke the fragile quiet with a light, cutting tone. "The blonde is very dear to Tate, huh?" she asked, not even bothering to lower her voice. Uncle Tim didn't miss the opening. His gaze snapped toward Noah, hard and lingering, before he leaned back slightly in his chair. "Speaking of which," he said, voice edged with something sharper, "has anyone seen Tate's bedroom painting?" None of the Blue family or the dozen business associates seated at the table answered at first, just a low chorus of no and quiet shrugs passing around the table. Tim didn't wait long before filling the silence, his voice laced with ridicule as he described the painting in Tate's room, exaggerating it into something grotesque, something offensive to their carefully preserved image. The table shifted with discomfort. Terrence coughed hard into his napkin, nearly choking on his roast chicken, while a few others exchanged uneasy glances. Only Talia didn't flinch. If anything, there was a flicker of approval in her expression, something softer, almost proud. Noah kept his eyes down, but the words pressed in anyway, stirring memories he couldn't shake. He remembered how Tate never hesitated to include Tate in anything the Blue family did. Every year, the same argument before family photos, the same quiet resistance from everyone else. And Tate, unyielding, immovable, he would stand there, jaw set, making it clear he wouldn't cooperate unless Noah stood beside him. "Stop it," Tate would say flatly. "Let Noe pose with us or I walk."